Okay, so we are on to this part. So the key is almost done here. We're going to start refining it and finalizing the key. So there's still a couple little things that need to be cleaned up. So if you're wondering about all these white edges, I think I mentioned it before, but these are not actually key problems. Like that's not a problem with the alpha, because if we darken down the original footage, that's actually part of the person that we're seeing. We're just getting a color from the background that's not the correct color. So we're going to be fixing all of those problems in the despill and using edge fixes. So these are not alpha problems. So just to note, you shouldn't be doing stuff like this to kind of erode. If you're doing erodes to try to get rid of that white edge, that's not going to be the correct way of solving this. There's actually a much better way to retain detail. So this is not the solution. We actually want that incorrect color just to get a better alpha. So the last alpha problems we actually have, I've went through and fixed a couple more things. I didn't record it, but it's pretty much just the same stuff that we've been doing. So I did some manual paint outs to just kind of remove the seams. So there were some seams on different frames that it's just easy to paint out with a clone stamp at the end there. And basically just a couple things like that. So there was some little holes in the alpha. So I went back to the holdout mats and I just added, some basic shapes to fill some of those areas in. So that's kind of the stuff that is remaining on this. We just need to clean up this gray area that's over the shoulder here, and we need to give this guy a core mat. So, and also maybe try to get rid of some of this. But once we have a core mat, this will be easy to get rid of. So I'm going to first do the last area with one more key, and then we'll generate a core mat to fill in these holes. So if I gamma down again, there's quite a lot of holes, but we can fix that pretty easily. So we'll just do the last part here, which is above his shoulder. So if I go before the garbage mat, I'll create another luminance key, the same method, and we will remove that area. I'll just time lapse this portion because it's the exact same technique that I've been doing with the luminance keys. So we're just doing another luminance key from the original plate that works for this area behind. All right, so now I'm going to create a core mat for this. So essentially what we want to do is just take this alpha and kind of shrink it in a little bit. So normally that's pretty easy. We could just erode it and kind of merge it back onto itself. And that's what we did in the last project. This one's a little bit different because we have our rope mat, which we don't really want a core mat for, because the majority of the time this rope is like kind of semi-transparent. So what we can do is I'm going to separate this rope mat into its own layer that is merged after this layer. So basically we're going to create a core mat with the entire alpha, but we don't want that rope as part of that alpha. So to show you what I mean is I'm going to copy this out and I'm going to merge it here. So now I can disable this. So these are just disabled. I'll just keep it there so we remember that's what I did. And I'm going to move this down a little bit. So in between there, now this is where we're going to create our core mat, because we want to use this entire alpha of what we have here. So let me just make sure. Yeah, so this will work for our core mat. We might have to cut some parts out of it and some different things, but let's just try this technique. So basically I'm going to take and erode. But first, before we start eroding and creating a core mat for this, I'm going to do a little technique to make it a little bit harsher of a key. So I'm going to do a grade, switch it to RGBA or alpha, and just put the white. If we gamma slam down while we're doing this, if we adjust the white point, we just want to fill it until the black areas go away, like that. And we can go back to the normal exposure, and maybe we want to push it a little bit more so we can get areas like this. So we can push it even a little bit further. Make sure we turn the white clamp on, because you see some areas are going above 1, which we don't really want. So you got to be careful of that. You don't want values ever really going over 1 in an alpha. And then the next thing I can do is take the black point and start shoving it the other direction. So it's kind of crunching this mat to be a very tight mat like this. So no motion blur, basically. One thing I can do as well is I did this manual clone stamp out, removing the seams, and I can just paste that RotoPaint here as well to get rid of some of those seams that were there. So if I put it here, it'll just get rid of the seams because I've just painted them out, which will make us a better mat. And essentially, so we still have some of the band in there, and that's because it's some of it is it's part of the key. It's not part of the roto, but it's fine for now. So what we're going to do is just shrink this in. So I have a filter erode. So if I type erode, I choose the one that says filter, not fast, but filter. It gives us some more options. And we can shrink it in. And we have the little weird issue if there's some little black areas. So again, if we go back to the grade, if we just shove the white point a little bit more, it'll get rid of that. So those little black squares sometimes can appear if there's little holes. Another way to fix it is if there's little holes like that. Again, it's the same thing we did before, but if we, instead of shrinking it inwards, first just shrink it outwards a little bit. So we go a little bit negative until that hole goes away. And then we make a duplicate, and now we shrink it back inwards. And you see now when we shrink, we don't have that little black thing appearing. So we're kind of shrinking it in using the box blur. And then we can do another filter erode and just switch it to Gaussian. And that just lets us like kind of fade it in a little bit softer. And then lastly, we could do a little bit of a blur to get rid of these kind of star patterns that sometimes form. So you can just kind of blur it like that. And now this thing, we're going to basically max this over. So if he switches to max, and we take a look, if we gamma down and we see what we're doing, this is what's happening. So we shrunk it way too far. It looks like we need to try to keep it closer to the edge a little bit. So I'm going to take one of these blurs here. So if I go back to, not this one, because that fixes the black little hole problem, but this specific blur, we could sort of control where this is being done. So let me just disable these two for a moment. And to see what I'm doing, it might be easier to look at our alpha, gamma down, and then disable it and enable it. So now we can kind of, might just help us sort of, get that core mat to feel a little bit closer to the edge. So you see our edge is there, and then we're just shoving it in. And then now we can do a little bit of a blur. That's way too much. We could even blur it negative for the Gaussian blur. So basically what I'm normally doing is I do a hard blur, which is a box, and then I do a soft blur, either inward or outward. And that just helps blend the two of these together. So I'm gonna make the soft blur a little bit less, and then try to get this a little bit closer to the edge. So something like that. That will probably work for a core mat. So you got to be careful though, because some of the areas, so actually, let me go back down. It looks like at normal exposure, I've blurred this way too much. So let me take the soft blur and just bring it way down, because apparently that's not something I was seeing at the low exposure. I'll just bring it way down, and then maybe just try a little bit of a normal blur, and then go back. So you always want to check two exposures. You want to check it going down, and you want to check it kind of going up. And this is not perfect solution for this mat because we have such complex shapes wrapping all the way around. But it is filling a lot of the holes. There's going to be some holes near the edges and stuff like that, but this is at a very low exposure. So in the final comp, this might not even be noticeable. But we'll see if we can do something a little bit better to try to improve this. So we can continue to try to play with that blur a little bit. Let's just try to get that soft blur a little bit closer to the edge. Otherwise, we could also try if we switch it to triangle blur. It's kind of like a hard blur and a soft blur, so it's a little bit different. So we can try different filters on these drop downs here. That doesn't seem like it's doing the best job, so we'll just stick with, let's just disable everything again and try to see if we can get a better fall off. So basically I'm just trying to get it really kind of as close to the edge as possible, not going further. So we could just do something like that. Basically, also you got to be really careful, because if your core mat goes into your motion blurred edges, you're going to get really messed up edges. So you want to keep it, still has to be a little bit smaller than your motion blur. So it's not always going to go right to the edge. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to put a normal blur. I'm not going to use this second erode, so we'll just leave it like this for now. And then what I'm going to do is try another technique, because this doesn't seem to be working the best for what we're doing. I mean, it's gotten us, if I gamma down, it's filled in a lot of the holes all the way around him. But some of the edges could be a little bit better. So what we can do is another technique. So if I go to the alpha and I put a grade off to the side, another way to do this fixing the edges is just to do a grade and switch it to RGBA. And we can push the white point up a little bit. And you see that that's kind of fixing a lot of the areas, and it's not affecting the motion blur areas too much. But if it is affecting too much into here, we can use this grade, but use the core mat to mask it. So essentially, if we put it like this, right now it's grading the entire image, but again, that's grading a little bit too far into our motion blur edge. So we can plug that into the core mat. So that's not really going to do anything, because our core mat is smaller than this area. So it's kind of helping, but not entirely. So what we can do is just erode the core mat, do a soft erode, and just slightly blur that outward. So instead of just merging something over, we're doing a grade, and we're masking it by a core mat. So it's doing a softer type of effect to fill that alpha in. versus just merging something over and it's not lining up properly. So this is kind of far away from the edge, but then we do this and it's kind of filling it much better. And it's not messing up our edges or anything like that. Here it's a little bit much, so we might have to treat that area a little bit separately. But let's just look at the normal exposure. So it seems like it's pushing into our motion blur just very slightly. So again, we can control that here. So we can sort of either pull it in or out and just take a look. So I think that's working pretty well. It's not completely solid if you go really, really low on the exposure, but I think that if we merge this over a dark background, you're not going to see anything happening wrong there. So it doesn't have to be completely perfect. It just has to not be visible in the final shot. So there's some other areas that this causes a problem with core matte. Let me just label this. So core matte creation. So obviously these semi-transparent edges, this effect just totally is not good. So basically we want to roto and make sure that it doesn't go in those areas. So I'm gonna stencil. I'm gonna put a roto stencil on those two layers that we just created. So I'll put a roto here and switch it to stencil. And I'll expand this a little bit and put another one and stencil this. So basically what I'm going to do is chop, like for example, this area, we're going to chop that off because we want to maintain that motion blur and semi-transparent look. We don't actually want any kind of core matte there. So there might be, I'm sure there's going to be some other areas that we need to do this as well. So I'll just step through the alpha and just see any potential problems that we're creating. So for example, here, there's a lot of motion blur, so I don't want to make that, I don't want to fill that alpha in, basically. We actually want that to be semi-transparent.